Welcome to the Alpha Human Podcast. I am your host, Lawrence Rosenberg, and today's guest is Dr. John Jaquish, inventor, scientist, and a research professor at Rushmore University and an expert in osteogenic loading and bone density, who has been nominated for the National Medal of Science and who is fast becoming known as the Tony Stark of the health and fitness industry. Dr. Jaquish is the inventor of OsteoStrong, a pioneering bone density device that has reversed osteoporosis for over 30,000 people and has helped.
It's actually hundreds of thousands of people now.
There you go. Hundreds of thousands of people, and has helped many professional athletes become more powerful, more resilient, and fracture resistant. He's also partnered up with Tony Robbins, a major advocate of the device, and they have so far opened over 300 OsteoStrong clinics, with many more to come. Now, as impressive as all that is, most actually know Dr. Jaquish due to the waves he's making in the world of fitness with his second invention, the revolutionary X3 bar, which uses a combination of resistance bands attached to a portable bar and platform that supports super high loads to build muscle 3 times faster than conventional weightlifting without the risk of joint injury. Dr. Jaquish, welcome to the show.
I feel like you work in my office. That's beautiful.
There you go.
Thank you. You hit everything I could have thought of.
Fantastic.
Lawrence, thank you for having me.
That's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Doctor. First off, there are so many inventors out there that have great ideas, devices, inventions, machines that never get off the ground or go anywhere, not even because of the efficacy of their invention, yet somehow you have managed to launch 2 incredibly successful products and commercialize them. What do you see as the biggest differentiator between yourself and most who don't realize your level of success?
2 things I do. I've never been asked this question. I love this question. So number one, and I was a practitioner of this, and when I started spending some time with Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins became one of my partners, he put it to words better, but so many people are fear-based decision makers. Like, they have an idea and they say, but what if it fails? And I'm like, who cares? Then at least I'll know that it doesn't work. Then I have no regrets, right? And so he says, life is filled with people that go right to the edge and they won't jump in. And he said, this is like 99.9% of the population. He said, I see people that come to my shows year after year. I recognize them. I never learn their names because there's tens of thousands of these people. And Tony Robbins will get 30,000 people to show up to a conference.
Yep.
So he starts, they come so much that out of 30,000 people, he starts to recognize them. And sometimes he'll just grab them out of the audience and he'll say, so, what changes have you made over the last few years in your life? I've seen you at a few of the shows. And they go, well, I'm planning, or I'm doing, getting ready to, and there was never action.
Right.
Never action. You just have to do it. Like, it sounds cliche, Nike, just do it, right? Yeah. Right. Except when it says just do it on a t-shirt, it's like nonsense. It it doesn't mean anything to anybody. But so many people actually have good ideas. And I know a dentist, he's a big X3 user, and he's a good friend. And he's told me about some dental tools that he's been thinking would be great for dentists because it would save a lot of time and, a billable appointment. Time is money for a dentist. If you can clean somebody's teeth in half the time, you making more money? Yes. So I trying to encourage him. Now, I don't know a lot about dental tools, so I can't help him very much. It's not my background, but it's like, if you don't, on your deathbed, you're going to sit there and go, why didn't I do that? Right? So,
no question.
Right. You just have to. It's like everybody, all your friends, everybody needs to get out of the way and just let you do it. And that's what I did. But both inventions, people told me, don't do that. You know, when it was a medical device, and I mean, with the rare exception of some very successful friends, and that was kind of a good clue to me. And my father's a very successful guy, and he's always like, let's try it, let's do it, let's build a prototype. So coincidentally, he put the car on the moon. He's one of the guys who designed and built the lunar rover.
Really?
So clearly a risk taker. Yeah. So obviously his idea was just go for it.
Right.
And that's what I did. Like when I said I was, I got a little allergy. Sorry.
No problem.
When it came to the medical device, so many of my fraternity brothers would say, oh, you don't want to do that. Like the medical device industry, there's billions of dollars there. If it actually works, pharma companies will try and shut you down. Which it kind of happened. There is a medical establishment that's very difficult to break into.
Okay.
And it favors pharmaceutical type studies. So if you don't have the pharma prerequisites, it's really hard to get recognized the way you'd like to be recognized. But other than that, I mean, yes, there's challenges in any industry. I'm sure if somebody wants to revolutionize the shoelace industry, that's probably a pain in the ass too. So, right, like all these industries are, they're very productive. They want to make sure they don't have a lot of competitors. So that's just the nature of business. But so number one is you cannot hesitate. You just have to jump. You have to do it. And the second thing is especially when you're going to be like a paradigm breaker, like something really industry disruptive, which I've now done in 2 different industries.
Right.
You got to accept the fact that you're going to have a lot of arrows in your back. You're going to infuriate people. Number one, which I don't care about. Because the people I infuriate, they're really unintelligent. I don't care about that. It's just like, it's like if a bird's mad at me, like, I don't care. Like I made a lot of noise. The bird's pissed off. It's screaming in the tree. Yeah, that's all these people are. So like number one, so you got to ignore that. But then the other thing is that, and this is the important part, you have to do enough background research that you can speak with absolute conviction. That when you're talking about the subjects that you talk about, that without a doubt, you really understand the subject, maybe one of the best in the world. So when it comes to compression of bone and bone adaptation, I'm one of those people.
Okay.
When it comes to crossing biomechanics into cellular adaptions, because most people that study biomechanics are physical therapists and chiropractors, right? Right. So they don't take a single class on adaptation or adaptation, if you want to call it that. They don't study it. Whereas, the sports physiologist is studying adaptation and maybe a little biomechanics. So understanding, like when it came to X3, understanding both those elements and how they really work together was, and I didn't want to know the most out of either of those 2 subjects. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know the most about how those 2 subjects relate. And that was X3. That was the revolutionary fitness product. And so it's knowing the subject and being able to speak with absolute conviction, and then just making the massive change to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Tony Robbins talks, a lot about massive action and
sure, massive action.
right, massive action. So, clearly you've taken that. But what I haven't heard before from a lot of motivational gurus or those who speak on success is something that you really do learn, though, as a so I'm in the world of sales. I run sales teams, and like one of the most important things in the world, if you're going to be able to get your point across, convince someone, evangelize to the degree that someone is on your side, is product knowledge. You have to be just incredibly steeped in what it is you're representing in order to create that kind of belief in someone else that what
Totally.
you've got.
Here's I'm gonna give you a sales example that I know.
Okay.
There's a guy I know who sells big data migration.
Mm-hmm.
He's been doing this for years, and huge, Fortune 50 type clients.
Okay.
So tens of millions of dollars contracts. And he started in engineering. So he goes in for an engineering consultation. So he doesn't do like the sales training or what they do at the company at all. He's got his own method.
Okay.
Because he goes in there for an engineering consultation. He says, I'm just going to analyze like how much money we can save you or whatever. And they don't see him as a salesperson. And sooner or later, they'll either offer him a job, or they'll just say like, "How do we get started?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I have a draft contract right here, and I put your company's name and address on it. It's for $20 million though." And they're like, "Fine, you're going to save us 50." They just sign it. Yeah, that's his method. Yeah, it's like because he just knows the subject.
So that's powerful stuff. I love those two pieces of insight from you. And you know what? Look, the other thing is and what probably goes along with this and what you've said is actually not just knowing what you have so well that you can explain it with absolute conviction. So being an expert in it, right? Or close to an expert. And
you may even become an expert in something that nobody's an expert in. Because what I said with X3, I don't know the most about biomechanics. I know a lot about biomechanics. I don't know the most about adaptation of human cells. I know a lot about adaptation of human cells. But as the two work together, I think I know the most about that.
So you've got that. But then there's another piece, which is not just believing it, but being it, right? Being it. And what I mean by that is you're the most jacked and muscular scientist most people have ever seen, okay? But that's bottom line. When you picture a scientist, right, you do not picture, Dr. Jaquish, right? I mean, so clearly you practice what you preach. And so
you can't trust somebody who doesn't. It's like, don't trust a fat fitness guy. Don't trust a skinny chef. I mean,
but you know what? I can't tell you how many times I've seen, fat people in the fitness industry. I mean, I funnily enough, my career began 25 years ago selling health club memberships for Jack LaLanne, right?
Wow.
The day. And I cannot tell you how many of the management staff when I started were all out of shape and overweight.
Right.
So, but that's the thing. But you, so clearly you represent this well, not just the knowledge base, but physically you easily embody what it is you're preaching. So I'm curious, first and foremost, how long have you been training for?
Well, let me start in the middle.
Okay.
When I started X3, I started doing videos. I was not in very good shape.
Really?
Well, I'm sure the non-exerciser would have said, okay, you obviously work out. But, I mean, nobody, like, stopped me at the grocery store and said, how did you get like that? Or, like, I mean, now people ask me for my autograph, and I'm like, who do you think I am? And they're like, are you an MMA fighter? They're like, I'm not sure who you are, but I know you're like, you're a professional athlete. And I'm like, no, I'm a scientist. And they kind of look at me like, what? So when starting X3, I was okay. I was like 190 pounds, 20% body fat.
Okay. And how tall are you?
6 foot.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And now I'm 9% body fat at 240 pounds. So, the product really works. It makes muscle growth. It's not easy. Like, you know who Dr. Sean Baker is?
Yeah, of course. I've had him on the show.
Oh, great. Yeah. So Dr. Baker says X3 workouts are the hardest thing he's ever done. And he's like a world record holder in the deadlift.
Yep.
World record holder in indoor rowing. So it's really hard workout, but you do grow muscle quickly.
So you went from 190 to 240 in what time frame?
That was about 3 years. So first 2 years I put on 45 pounds of muscle and lost 16 pounds of body fat. That transformations are always the most aggressive, in the beginning.
Yeah,
and this all happened over 40 years old.
Yeah, I was just going to say, usually if you're going to see something like that, you see it in a teenager who has the genetics, they're 16, they start weightlifting and they just blow up and they eventually get into bodybuilding or, some kind of thing like this.
Yeah. NFL.
To hear about 45 pounds of muscle growth in your 40s after 3 years of training, that's impressive.
2 years. That was 2 years.
2 years of training. So, yeah. Okay. So, all right. So now let's start to understand how's that possible using the X3. So let's talk about what that's all about, what the science of it is, how it works. Again, the claims that it's 3 times faster than weightlifting. That sounds like it's even faster than that with the results that you've seen. So let's talk about how that's possible.
So it has to do with looking at the variance and capability of the human body. So when you go to do a push-up, when your nose is really close to the ground, it's the harder part of the push-up. And as your arms become straighter, it's the easier part of the push-up.
Yeah.
And in fact, you see like kids in high school cheat at push-ups and they only go down like a third of the way, right?
Yes.
Yeah, especially the chubby kids, because they might not be able to get up. Yeah. Really sad. When I drive by like an elementary school now, it's like half of the kids are chubby. So when it's sad, I don't know why I'm laughing.
It's just absurd.
Yeah, it's just the direction society is going. Yeah. We'll get into that next.
We will. But
yeah. So when I was developing the osteogenic loading medical devices, what those devices do is isolate the most powerful range of motion. So where a human would normally absorb high impact forces. And so we isolate those positions and then allow them to self-compress. So they create the force. So they create force in those positions, and then it's read with a highly sensitive. So first of all, they're positioned by a robotic arm, and then they are their performance is recorded via computerized system and sensitive measurement devices. So we capture exactly to the pound per second they are creating force.
And this is with OsteoStrong.
It's with OsteoStrong, right? And I realized when I looked at deconditioned, as in highly unathletic people, for those who don't know what deconditioned means, highly unathletic people who had osteoporosis, who were test subjects in the clinical trial that I did in London. I was a hospital in London, and I'm looking at the loading, and the doctors that are there, there was the principal investigator, the people who were really close to the program, and they had already asked all the good questions. But some of the casual observer physicians that were in the hospital would say, what do people do in the gym? Because we're seeing these little old ladies put 500, 600, 700 pounds through their hip joint in these very, very select positions. You know, they're moving like 2 millimeters.
Okay. When
they do the movement. So there's movement, not static, but they have these, and the movement is actually from the compression of bone. So the bone actually gets shorter. Okay. Like your femur does this, compresses from end to end. And so we're looking at what kind of loading is going through there. And the doctor's like, what do people lift in the gym on average? And I said, well, there's data on that. Let me get it for you. Mm-hmm. And so I looked at what the American College of Sports Medicine had published in a couple different journals. So they do analysis of the NAIMS database. Right. I want to remember exactly what that acronym is. It's a long one. But like National Health and Nutrition or something like that. And so what they look at is like, they survey about 1,000 people a year in a huge battery of tests and medical metrics that they take in. Mm-hmm. And so what they determined was, looking at the NA's database, that most people go between 1.3 and 1.53 multiples of their own body weight. Right. That they load through their hip joint. Okay. So I'm just looking at the hip joint here, because that's where there's the most data on, especially for bone, because that's where the mortality-related fractures come from. So, right, you can have a fragility fracture of your wrist, and it's very inconvenient. You shatter your hip, you have if you're over 50, you have a 50% likelihood of death within 1 year. Wow. Because of the complications. Yeah, 50% chance of death after 50 if you have a hip fracture.
That's unbelievable.
50's not that old.
No,
it's terrible. So that's why we have so much data on it. So when I looked at the 1.3 to 1.53, and then I looked at what we were doing 7, 8, 9 times body weight. People were using 9 times their body weight. So it makes what we do at the gym, mm-hmm. I mean, the strongest, I think it's like top 5%, only use 1.53 times their body weight when they exercise their lower body.
Wow. Compared
to 9 multiples of body weight, which was what the top third of the osteogenic loading crowd was doing. So I just said to myself, weightlifting's a waste of time. Like, using the same weight in a weaker range and a stronger range is just nonsense. Like, it's a complete misread of how the body works. Now, yes, functionally, the things we pick up are one weight. You know, if you have a suitcase to pick up, it doesn't get, heavier when you get into stronger ranges. But we don't carry suitcases for fitness. We carry them because we have to. What about fitness? What would be the best? And so I determined that we need the factor. We need to match what the research has shown, or at least come close to it. Mm-hmm. So we have X at the bottom in the weaker range. We should have 7X at the top, but if we go X to 5X or 5.5X, that's still absolutely a hell of a lot better.
And is that the amount, when you say, 7X, are you talking about the amount of force, or are you talking about the weight itself?
Same thing. Yeah. Okay. The amount of force placed on the body. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Okay.
So we need massive variance. So then I thought, okay, maybe I can just write a book about band training, because that's variable resistance. And you can get to some high levels of variance. But the problem was bands have been used in rehab for a long time. But that's because you're using small joints, small movements, very targeted. Once you get the banding heavy enough to be relevant for strength, then this starts to happen. You start to twist joints.
Right.
If you stand on a band and try to do a deadlift, you're twisting your ankles inward. And, let's say you're using a couple 100 pounds, you could break an ankle. So that was not, most people would have a neural inhibition, like their body would just shut off before they'd actually create a fracture. Right. But it was just a worthless endeavor. It was terrible. So I just decided, okay, band training is not it. We got to have something else. And also, I can't find bands that are even remotely heavy enough. So because now that I know that we're actually 7 times stronger than we think we are, I mean, everybody is 7 times stronger than they think they are, if their strength is gauged by what they do in the gym. So what we need to do is find, now, of course, we are using multiple reps, like one repetition maximums are not good for muscle growth in any way whatsoever. They're great for neurological system, but that's about it. So, and coincidentally, you do multiple repetition schemes, and that's great for the neurological system too. So nobody needs to do a 1 rep maximum. So I wanted to pick a weight where it was very easy on the joints, in the weaker range of motion to avoid injury, and incredibly heavy, heavier than we'd ever train with, heavier than we'd ever be able to get into position.
Right.
In the stronger range. And because of our variable capacity, we might be able to train with 20 or even 40 repetitions with that kind of load, which brings us to a very deep level of fatigue. And that depth of fatigue, the extremeness of the fatigue, is why so much growth is triggered. Because it's far beyond what you could ever do with a weight. It makes fatigue with weight training look like a joke. And that's why Dr. Baker says it's the hardest workout ever.
Right. So, wow. Okay. So that opens up all kinds of doors. But the first one is, how is it that, especially with your OsteoStrong device, putting that kind of force, right, that kind of compression on the bone, so why are we capable of having that kind of force, and the bone doesn't snap?
Neural inhibition is the answer to that question.
So can you explain? I understand what neural inhibition is, sure, but for those who are listening who don't understand.
When you're uncomfortable and you're maybe closer to creating an injury,
yes,
your central nervous system will shut your muscles off, or whatever movement pattern off, so that you avoid injury. Let's say you're sprinting and your hamstring tightens up. Immediately you slow down. Not just because of the hamstring, but because you start losing your balance. And balance has a relationship with how much muscle is allowed to be switched on. So that's neural inhibitory. All of a sudden muscles start to shut off and you slow down. So like when I was playing rugby and I would go up against some Samoan guy who was just built to hit people.
Right.
And I couldn't knock him down. All I would do is just shove him real hard and get him off balance, because he'd lose his speed. And then the rest of my guys would come in and take him down. So that, that was a neural inhibitory process. I learned that term when I was playing rugby, just to better understand, like, why is it that when I just get somebody off balance, they can't run?
And so, all right. So again, so it's kind of like the governor, right? That stops you well before you're at your limit.
Yep.
And so our limit is, so our true strength is so much more than we ever get an opportunity to perform or to realize because of that. So now how does working with these bands and with the X3 bar allow you to kind of get that advantage without neural inhibition?
So where neural inhibition happens,
right,
in weightlifting type movement is in the weaker range, because that's where people injure. People don't injure in the strong range. You don't tear your tricep in the strong range. You tear it when your back.
Right.
When the tricep is in a stretched position. Right?
Yep.
So when you're using X3, the weight drops way off. So like when I do a chest press, at the top, I'm holding 540 pounds. As I move down to the middle of the repetition, I'm holding 300 pounds.
Right.
When I get to the weaker range, I'm holding 100 pounds. Well, that's less weight than I would use in a push-up.
Right.
So am I going to injure with 100 pounds? No. But check this out. Part of the protocol is you use diminishing range. So you always keep tension on the muscle.
Okay.
And then you diminish the range as you use the product. So once I cannot get to 540 pounds anymore, once I have exhausted the fully engaged position of the musculature,
mm-hmm.
I can't get there anymore. So now I just start doing reps going halfway.
Okay.
So yeah, they might be 8-inch reps instead of, or 9-inch, 9-10, instead of the full extension. And I do however many of those I can do until I can no longer get to that range of motion. And then my last 3 or 4 repetitions are just using the 100 pounds. I've exhausted the muscle completely. You cannot do this with a weight.
Right.
I mean, even if you rack the weight and, take some of the weight off and do like a drop set or something like that. Coincidentally, drop sets don't do anything. There's research on it. Yeah. Just because, and it's because you're losing the hypoxic effect and you're starting to recover the muscle in between the sets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like turn the muscle on, turn the muscle off, turn the muscle on, turn the muscle off. Is that an intense experience for the central nervous system? No, it's just confusing the central nervous system, so it doesn't do anything.
So you might be the most hated guy in fitness, given all the myths. And
I have a YouTube show which I'm rebooting really soon called The Falsehoods of Fitness.
I saw a couple of those.
Yeah. There's clowns out there who made a whole career out of saying, this is how you train just the outside of the tricep.
That's right.
Or the outer head of the bicep, just this part right here. No such thing. You can't do that. Nobody can do that. Anybody that has a different shaped muscle than another guy, it's like a fingerprint. You were born with it. You can make it bigger, or you can sit on the couch and make it smaller. Like, you can't change the shape. So guys that try and sell protocols for 100 different variations of exercises are just selling the program. They probably think they're doing the right thing, because what happens is somebody with like really, really tall peaks on their biceps, mm-hmm. right here, like it's like, okay, they have tall peaks, so now they're an expert on the subject.
Right.
You were born with tall peaks and you're an expert of nothing. So I can demonstrate that in research. It's pretty clear. You cannot reshape the body.
So hold on. So, all right. So you can't isolate specific aspects of the musculature. You can't isolate one of the heads of the tricep. Drop sets are bullshit. Hold on. What about progressive resistance? Does that build muscle?
Well, I mean, yes, but I hate the term because progressive resistance is not a strategy, it's a result. Progressive resistance means you're getting stronger, right? Because you're using a little bit more resistance every time. And the idea is you're using incremental more resistance. It's like people say it automatically because they just heard it.
That's correct.
It's really a totally stupid term. That's like saying, what are you asking somebody, what do they do for a living? I cash checks. Really? So you don't have to go to a job to get a paycheck? You just cash checks, huh? So progressive resistance is a result. It is not a strategy. It is not something you do. It's almost as dumb as my strategy is getting stronger. That's how I work out. People would just look at you like, what? So how do you do that? Oh, I just get stronger. Okay, so you're a moron.
So what about?
It doesn't make any sense.
This is amazing. Wait. So, okay. So what about forced reps? Does forced reps work?
Yes. Forced reps work. I wouldn't do it with X3 because X3 does it automatically.
Okay.
But forced reps are another approach, a very non-efficient approach to variable resistance. So it's helping you through some of the harder parts of the movement in the weaker range of motion so you can get more fatigue in the stronger range of motion. The problem is if somebody isn't helping you and you need help through the weaker range of motion, that's where you tear your pec or you tear a tricep or worse. Like if you're doing a lower body movement, you could screw up your ability to walk for the rest of your life. So, I mean, it's not something I don't lift weights anymore. I think lifting weights is just a worthless endeavor. I would never do it because of all the limitations I just explained.
Okay, so weightlifting is absolutely worthless, and alongside that, of course, same goes for the machines, right? So whether it's free weights or machines, waste of time.
I especially dislike machines because, and people have known this just through experience. Like you go into an NFL training room and you don't see any machines. It's just racks.
Right.
Racks and weights. That's it. Like nothing, no leg sled, no nothing. And there was a study a few years ago, and this was actually a reference in my growth hormone study. It was done in 2016, where we look at what it takes to trigger growth hormone. And they compared a free weight squat to a leg sled type leg press device. And even though the people using the leg sled used over 2 times the amount of weight,
right?
They looked at the growth hormone that was created by the exercise. So the exercisers who use the squats, they increase their growth hormone by 600%. That's a lot.
It's huge.
Yeah. And even so, the leg sled guys use double the amount of weight. What do you think their percentage increase was?
No idea.
0%.
Really?
It's like they didn't work out at all. Now, growth hormone is not the full story to the growth of the human body, but it's pretty important for metabolic function. It's one of the more powerful anti-catabolic hormones. Also, like when you're an adult, it shouldn't be called human growth hormone. It should be called human repair hormone because it repairs a lot of stuff. So, when somebody says growth hormone's not anabolic, like there's some nutrition guy that always says that because his nutrition program is very cortisol heavy. Let's just call it that. And basically, he tells people they can get fit and eating candy bars. Yeah, smart guy. Just kidding. So I won't name names though. So right. So he's like, growth hormone doesn't matter because it's not anabolic. And like, wow, that is such a mystery how that works, but okay. So we want the maximum amount of growth hormone. So we want self-stabilized type motions. Now, X3 works even better in that regard than free weights, because where like the only thing that can attenuate a different level of growth hormone is the weight used.
Okay.
Well, the weight you use with X3 is far higher than any weight you could ever lift anywhere, with more repetitions, because the weight climbs when your capability climbs. The more capability, the more weight comes on you. So I was just doing one-legged squats with 350 pounds on each leg. And like, I know my legs are, you know, they're feeling it right now. This is about an hour before we started this podcast, but it's just such a better stimulus. It's awesome. And I'm on one leg, so I have even more stabilization firing and even more growth hormone.
Okay, so speaking about then your training, your actual training with X3, how long do you train for? Like, what's the protocol? How much time do you spend?
This is another thing people really hate me for, and I don't blame them for this, because a lot of scammy products say you can get a workout done in a hurry.
Yeah.
So I work out, I say 10 minutes. Most people can get it done in 10 minutes. I've gotten to the point where I'm so big that each muscle, like in the beginning it was 10 minutes. Okay. And now like my quadriceps, my glutes are so huge, they draw so much blood that it takes me a while to catch my breath between sets. You know, the bigger someone is, it kind of creates the illusion that they have poor cardiovascular health. It's not true. It's just they have so much blood drawn into each large muscle that they're gasping for air. It doesn't mean they don't have cardiovascular endurance. They have better cardiovascular endurance than people who are running every day. But it is manifest in a different way, because the engine that they're using to drive their body, or the engines, I look at each muscle as a separate engine, are huge. So like you see a 14-year-old do bicep curls, they're not out of breath. They can go as hard as they can, put the weights down, and they take one breath and they're ready to do the next thing. Whereas for me, like it takes me probably 45 seconds to catch my breath after a bicep curl set.
So hold on. So what would a workout, let's put leg day aside. So what would a typical workout with the X3 bar look like on, you know, a certain day? What movements would you do, and how long would it take for the total workout then? If it's not 10 minutes, what is it now?
It's like 15
okay.
minutes, and it's 4 sets. You do 1 set per exercise. You can't do more than that. It's so exhausting.
1 set per exercise.
Right.
And so so let's say chest. So chest is 1 movement, 1 exercise.
We go a little higher reps too. So it could be, you know, 30 repetitions, 20 repetitions, something like that.
And then what's the next exercise you do after chest?
Overhead press.
Okay.
Bicep press.
Okay.
And then I'll do squats.
That's all in the same workout.
Yep.
And that's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The entire workout.
Yeah. After the squats, I'm usually like, I have to sit down for 5 minutes, just breathe, because it's very exhausting.
So this is okay. So a couple of things. Yeah. So of course, you know, the entire fitness industry will absolutely just deny that is possible. Right? Of course. Yeah. I mean, you would put
everybody that sells equipment, I'm sure that half of my trolls go and work. They're working for a big fitness manufacturer.
This concept, this idea, this fact just puts the entire fitness industry out of business. Right. So hold on a second. I don't, you're like Tony Stark, but you're more you're like a radical, like within the fitness industry. So, but here's the thing, you reminded me of something, because you talk about this one set to the point of such failure that you can't even stand up. That reminds me of Mike Mentzer, and his heavy duty style of training that he was talking about back in the day. Are you familiar with Mike Mentzer? Are you familiar with that? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so
I wish I had met the guy.
Wow.
In his last book, he actually said something about how it's a shame that certain parts of movements are so much easier than others, because maybe we could change how we load the body and get an even better experience. And it was like, I read that, and well, that was before I developed anything, and either of my inventions. And I was like, yeah, like, so this guy saw the future.
It's unbelievable.
I think he wrote that book and died like maybe 6 months later.
Yeah, it's a tragic ending. His life, he fell into drugs and, depression. It was, and then his brother died, like, I think a couple of weeks later, Ray Mentzer.
Yeah.
But so the one set to absolute failure is not just, I mean, that is then the most, if you were able to do it, truly exhaust those muscles beyond anything that weights could do.
Yeah. So I use an analogy that even a bodybuilder can understand. Because a lot of them don't have a scientific background. It's almost unfair when I give a scientific reference to a guy who just follows bodybuilding, because he's like, what is all this like last names and a year and some abbreviations? Like, it's an academic reference,
right?
From like school. Like, yeah, they don't know what that is.
Right.
Like, peer-reviewed journal, ever heard of one? No, they don't. And why would they? I mean, some of these guys are, they might be professionals, but they're not crossing into any industry that they'd have to read academic references. So, I think it's really funny that bodybuilding and fitness, the majority of the content is on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure it's because the majority of the fans are borderline illiterate. Yeah, like, I mean, they don't want something written. They'd rather have a video. Really? Because I'd always rather have something written so I can look at the data.
Right.
Last thing was a goddamn video. If somebody sends me a video about data, I'm like, give me an article. Give me a scientific reference. Anyway, so what was the question? I got distracted by thinking about these illiterate.
We were talking about how just one set to absolute failure, and you were going to bring up a reference.
Yeah, and I say that when people are like, you can't get a workout from one set, I say, how many sets do you need to do in the sun to get a suntan?
Yeah.
And then, they look at me like, well, you only have to go out once. Right. So if you want cells of the body to change, you just have to give them one stimulus. Now, they wouldn't know this, but bone is the same thing. One tremendous load exposure to bone, and it starts changing immediately. Within 5 minutes, you can test somebody's blood, and you can see the pieces of broken down bone that have been sacrificed to make room for growth for new bone. New, more dense bone, more powerful bone. Yeah, within 5 minutes of one load exposure that might last a tenth of a second.
So this was the discovery that you made with respect to OsteoStrong. So that was actually going to be my one of my questions, which is how does OsteoStrong, how does that equipment that you invented, how does it actually increase bone density? And so now that's how
compression of bone. So when what happened was my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. This is how I got into all of this.
Okay.
And she was in her 70s, and she played tennis, and she gardened and went hiking. She'd go on really big hikes.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, we're talking like 10-mile hikes. So she was not deconditioned, but she still had osteoporosis. And so she says, like, well, I don't understand how I got this. I tell you, you need to be active. I'm active. And so I said, let me look into this, because she read the side effects of some of the drugs, mm-hmm. and she was in tears. She's like, I don't want to take this. This sounds worse than a fracture. So I said, let me look into it. And then as I started reading, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try and see if there's a group of outliers out there. A group of people that have built an incredible amount of bone. Mm-hmm. Highest bone density in the world. I'm going to see how they did it, and I'm going to see what they did, so maybe we can replicate it for you.
Okay.
And it was one of the easiest things to find, because this population they studied the hell out of them. And I know, because I've talked to the top minds in the field. Mm-hmm. When I got invited to speak 4 times in a row at the World Congress on Osteoporosis, and all the top researchers there. And so when I told them about this population of people with superhuman bone, they would just interrupt me. They're like, "Oh, you mean gymnasts?" That's right, gymnasts. Yeah, and they shake their heads. They're like, we've been trying to isolate the growth factors that the gymnasts secrete to create more growth in bone for a long time. That's been part of the pharmacological approach. And of course, I'm just solving the problem with a flamethrower, because I'm just forcing the body to do what happens in the gymnast by compressing the bone physically, mechanically. So, there's no drug needed. Just do what the gymnast does, except with my device, what I did was I wanted to get the benefits of the high impact loading without the risks. So you isolate those positions with the robotics, and then you allow people to, in a careful and controlled manner, using neural inhibition. Because if they slam into something, there's no neural inhibition. It's just an abrupt experience. It's impact. We're looking to emulate impact, not engage impact. So in that slow and controlled manner, they can get that experience of high impact loading without the risks, and they grow just as fast as the gymnast does.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and women in their 90s will grow bone density like faster than teens.
That is, and how often would they have to do an OsteoStrong workout?
The metabolic rate of bone is different than the metabolic rate of muscle, than the metabolic rate of the cardiovascular system. So you don't want to do it more than once a week. Gotcha. Just one massive load exposure per week. That was a little like Mike Mentzer too. But for muscle is, bone is a throttle to muscle growth. So the higher the bone density you have, the more muscle you're allowed to hold in your body, for obvious reasons. You don't want the engine to be more powerful than the chassis. It's like putting a Formula One engine in a Prius and just tear the wheels right off the car.
Right.
Yeah, the central nervous system won't let you do that. So everything's very balanced. But you make bone density more powerful, which X3 will do a little bit, but OsteoStrong does a lot. And then you can end up holding more musculature.
So do you personally use both? Do you?
Yes.
So that you can continue.
Yeah, I don't get to use OsteoStrong as much as I'd like to.
Okay.
Probably once every other month now.
Okay.
So once a week, just because an apartment in San Francisco. It's $100,000 medical device. It's the size of a car. So I'm not going to put one here. And then I don't have one in my office, but I'll, whenever I go and visit an OsteoStrong location, I definitely use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely revolutionary, especially considering the elderly population and the absolute plague that osteoporosis. People don't realize how dangerous.
Fractured and as many lives as breast cancer.
That's crazy.
Right. It's the complication. Somebody has a hip fracture, and then 6 months later, because they've been in bed and they haven't been able to move around, they start to build fluid in their lungs, and then they get pneumonia, and then they die of pneumonia. So for some reason, that doesn't sound as ominous as breast cancer does.
Yeah. People they just don't.
Death is death.
I mean, I didn't, the statistic you mentioned before, I haven't heard that. That's like shocking about if you have a hip
chance of death after 50 years old from a hip fracture.
Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So, so you mentioned the idiot whose nutritional regime for people that want to get in shape is candy bars, right? So that kind of nonsense. What do you eat? Okay, first off, you're working out with X3, incredible results, GH production at very high levels, what fantastic science behind it. Does it matter what you eat to achieve that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if you want to grow muscle, protein is what counts, and high quality protein. Low quality protein like pea protein or alfalfa protein, it only has a 1-digit utilization factor. So your body can only metabolize, let's say, 8% of that type of protein because it's got all the wrong balance of amino acids for muscle protein synthesis. So you just secrete it in the form of nitrogen. You just lose it.
Okay. So what do you eat? What does your nutrition program look like?
Very animal protein heavy. Had a couple pounds of steak. Almost 3.5 pounds of steak yesterday. Mm-hmm. That's some ground beef a little bit earlier, and then some fillets later.
Okay. So it's mostly carnivore.
Chicken after my workout. Chicken's not my favorite. Mm-hmm. But there's a new curry place down the street, so I want to try it. And my girlfriend's giggling. So had a little bit of the curry chicken, and then tonight another couple pounds of steak.
So it's mostly a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Right. So and clearly our friend Dr. Sean Baker is the face of the carnivore movement, right?
Sean and I are good friends. We talk about our workouts all the time. Talk about our nutrition all the time. Talk about farming all the time. We both want to be big advocates of responsible farming. It treats animals in a better way. Also decentralizing the farming, so it's not just like 3 big factory meat companies that control all the meat. I have a friend who's in the meat distribution business, and he has mentioned to me that he thinks this whole meat shortage thing is kind of fake news, and that they're holding back to drive the prices up. They're taking advantage. Totally possible. I don't know that that's true or not true, but it's a theory from a guy who's been in the industry a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as a distributor, he doesn't care because he's buying it for more and selling it for more.
Right.
So you still getting the same margin. It's just that people, they're not going to quit eating it. So they just pay more for it. So,
Yeah. But the amount of meat that we consume is, just almost nothing these days. It's absolutely at historical lows, the amount of meat, right, that the population.
People are weaker and fatter than ever.
There you go. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, and it was very interesting because I came at this through a very non-biased way. When I started, when I was doing just OsteoStrong, I really didn't pay attention to my nutrition. I mean, I didn't eat, apple pie every day, but I was ketogenic, I guess. So I guess I did pay attention to my nutrition, but
okay.
I think basic ketogenic nutrition is so easy, it's almost effortless.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have more protein and fat, and then I love Dave Asprey's book because, like, in the very end, it's like, still you should be eating a majority of vegetables. It's like the whole book is telling you to do the opposite of that. Yet your conclusion is you should have like 7 servings of vegetables a day. I was totally disappointed when I got to the end of that book. And I think he just put that in there.
Covering his ass.
Yeah, to kind of keep from being beat up. But I almost have no vegetables.
What about carbs?
Very limited amount of carbohydrates. Very limited. And then, and of course, I try and have those in a window like right after the workout, so it replenishes glycogen.
Right.
I mean, even bodybuilders know that trick. So
they got one trick right. They got one.
Right. I'm sure they couldn't explain why it works, but some of them could. As long as there's a video that shows them how to do it. Nothing written. Right. So like basically, maybe like a little bit of rice after a workout.
Okay.
Glycogen, and then the rest of it's just carnivore.
That's powerful. So, I wanted to actually ask you a question that I forgot to ask when we were talking about Mentzer and inventions. What were your? So again, we've established that free weights are a waste of time. The machines are even worse. But what were your thoughts about Arthur Jones and Nautilus? Is that just as much garbage as everything else?
No, Arthur was great.
That's what I want to hear.
He was so brilliant. Yeah, I've read every word that guy has written 20 times.
Wow. Hoping
that there's like something implied that like was like a message to me. Right. Like my admiration for Arthur Jones is almost on a spiritual level.
Wow.
Like that guy, he understood that the body has variable capacities to create force.
Mm-hmm.
We should train with variable resistance. He just didn't get the ratios right. He would use X at the bottom and 1.2X at the top. Whereas if he had seen my research, the guy probably would have grown 3 feet taller because it was like, oh, this is the actual documentation of maximum capability in the most powerful ranges of motion, through the gymnastics research, the impact absorption research. So, and then, we probably would have worked together on this to look at how we could really grab a hold of weak range to strong range and exhaust the whole muscle through one experience. And it was like he was going in the direction that I went. I think his ultimate conclusion would have been X3. He just didn't live long enough.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And also he pretty much taught Mentzer, like everything Mentzer was. That was his protege. Yeah.
That's right. So One other question, and then I want to just move into just something a little bit different, akin to the first question I asked you, because really want to understand a bit more about your psychology and, I mean, your success and how you view that kind of thing. But one last question about, physical fitness and how this all relates to getting in great shape and being vibrant and healthy and strong. The biggest the biggest domino I've heard you topple is this whole idea about cardio. So everyone you talk to in fitness, cardio is an absolute must. There are those that are going to say it's for heart health. There are those that are going to say it's to lose body fat. But there is almost no one saying you don't need to do cardio, you shouldn't do cardio. And then they even come up with, well, you shouldn't do steady state cardio burns fat, but if you do sprints, that'll really get you ripped. I mean, there's all kinds of stories around why everyone should be doing cardio. But I've heard you just completely topple that dogma. Tell us about cardio.
Okay, let me start with the high intensity intervals.
Okay.
The high intensity intervals are effective for accelerated loss of body fat.
Okay.
Not because of what's going on with the cardiovascular system. It's because the faster you move, the more stabilization firing. And what do we get from stabilization firing? Growth hormone.
Wow.
Right? Look at the skull of a sprinter. It looks like it's lined up with a laser. The whole body is moving. They're throwing their hand back, so their twist to the pelvis is more, so their foot strike can have a longer stride.
Right.
Whole body's moving, yet the skull is absolutely still. Because they're not trying to conserve energy. They're trying to maximize energy expenditure to propel themselves as fast as possible. Whereas someone who is running distance, not doing intervals, doing steady state cardio, you see their skull bobbing up and down because they're trying to minimize the amount of energy usage. So they don't need to stabilize the skull. They don't need to switch on more muscle. In fact, they're trying to switch on less muscle to use less energy. So if you look at the stance of a distance runner, they're kind of leaning forward. They're sort of perpetually falling and catching themselves with the next stride, which is short, very short strides.
Right.
Right. So the answer is growth hormone. It's stabilization firing.
Wow.
It's got absolutely nothing to do with the cardiovascular system. So I would say use X3 because you get the maximum amount of stabilization firing. When I do an overhead press and I'm holding, like 150 pounds over my head with X3, well, what's my core doing? Well, my core is just vibrating, jackhammering. That's all stabilization firing. My growth hormone's going through the roof. So that's a sprint right there. Same thing. Body doesn't know the difference. Doesn't know how far you went. Now, if you want to do it without strength training, jump rope. Every time you hit the ground, every stabilizer has to fire to keep you from tipping over like a bowling pin.
Right.
You ever seen guys who are like boxers or like the only way to get ripped is jump rope? And that's been around since the 1960s, and people laugh at it. It's like you're hopping like a millimeter off the ground. You're not doing anything.
Right.
It's the anything. What define anything? Like something very profound is happening in that tiny little movement, and it's an upregulation of growth hormone. So, and that's why the lipolysis is so aggressive. So, okay, we addressed the interval and sprint type training. Now, yes, people. Social media has shown us. And this is true of very many subjects: nutrition, fitness, politics. People want to read and see the bullshit they already believe is true. That's why, whether you like the President of the United States or not, I have a lot of, I live in the People's Republic of San Francisco. So you know what people think here, and I'm not even like a guy who's radically on one side or the other. I pretty much think stupidity is universal, and I laugh at some people, especially some of my friends, who they'll find an article and I'll be like, "Oh, you did some research to find this article," and they go, "Yeah," they're really proud of themselves, and I go like, "What did you type? Trump is a jerk? Is that your scientific search term? Like, you're an idiot. Like, you're not gonna find anything worth reading if that's the way you're researching." But think of heavy people. There's a lot of heavy people that go to look for like a weight loss program, how to lose body fat while eating Twinkies. And this guy I was talking about earlier, a guy says eat candy bars and you lose all the weight you want. That's how he sells his programs. That's it's his audience. I mean, I don't know, like, I don't have a picture of all of his users. He doesn't even have that. But it is, you got to think like anybody with a brain knows it's not true. Or he's putting them in a caloric deficit, so they're actually losing muscle instead of body fat.
Right.
Which is what bodybuilders are really good at. Like they get in great shape and they're like, I got to cut, and then they go on a really aggressive calorie deficit and they lose just as much muscle as they do body fat. So when somebody asks me, why don't I do cardio? I say, well, there's actually no such thing as cardio. Like, so it's not that I don't do it. I train my heart. Like, I have better cardiovascular endurance than many distance runners. In fact, when I do like the whole battery of tests, like there was a test I did at some kind of multi-physician clinic that had all kinds of physical performance. It was in New Jersey. They had basically they were going to give you your physiological age.
Okay.
And I'm not a kid anymore, but they told me I was physiologically 19 years old.
Jesus.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool because of my lung function, my cardiac function, my muscular strength function, blood work, C-reactive proteins, inflammation, markers in the blood, whole battery of tests. And so it just determined that I was like as healthy as an athletic 19-year-old. And the reason I bring that up is for the cardiac health. Strength training is cardiovascular training. But people are confused because the bigger a muscle becomes, the more blood it draws, which creates the illusion of poor endurance. So the ability to run 20 miles and the health of your heart are two unrelated subjects.
Unbelievable.
Right? I mean, if you see a 240-pound running back in the NFL, can that guy run 20 miles? Absolutely not. You think he has good cardiovascular endurance? Absolutely he does. So he just can't run as far, but that doesn't speak to how much blood his heart can pump with efficiency. So there's a couple of studies. I mean, these are double-blind, randomized controlled trials.
Right.
So really good studies looking at cardiac function in strength athletes and in endurance athletes. And the reason I say there's no such thing as cardio is really just really bad strength training that makes you weaker instead of stronger, because it shoots cortisol up, and cortisol does two things: protects body fat, so it keeps you fatter longer,
right,
and sacrifices muscle mass. So when people do a lot of cardio and they lose weight, they're losing muscle. And then, of course, the less muscle they have, the more impact is felt in the joints as opposed to discharged. You got to think your muscles are like shock absorbers for when you contact the ground or contact anything. But you're making those shock absorbers weaker and putting more force into the bone and the tendons and the ligaments. So joint damage, rapid loss of muscle, protection of body fat, if not gaining more body fat.
Right.
And it's the opposite of what everybody wants. Now, of course, if you want to be a marathon runner, there's only one way to do that. You go run marathons.
Yeah.
But don't be fooled into the idea that you're going to look like an NFL running back by running marathons. Not going to happen. It's you're two opposite directions.
So
And
completely unrelated then. Completely unrelated.
Yeah. And if you ever see a running back who decides to go run marathons, his physique disappears. He just turns into a, kind of a really feeble looking guy.
Yeah. You definitely hold. Yeah. I mean, I, of course, fell into the, the myth that it's a great way to lose body fat years ago, and couldn't understand why I had less muscle and more body fat from running, 7 miles a day.
Mm-hmm.
And, so clearly, but, what you were talking about before is cognitive bias, right? You look for information that supports, right, your preconceived notions. And, it's almost like everything we're talking about here is the opposite of popular knowledge, right? Conventional wisdom is.
There's not a lot of wisdom in conventional wisdom.
Exactly. So amazing stuff. So, so outside of what you've accomplished so far, and what you're doing now, I mean, clearly you're super passionate about it. You're super knowledgeable about the benefits of X3 and OsteoStrong. You're actually living this truth, and a great representative for the brand and for the inventions that you've created. So where does Dr. Jaquish go next? Right? Like, you're a guy that hangs out with Tony Robbins. You're very success oriented. So what's next for you? Where do you, are you working on any other inventions? Where do you see yourself, going from here over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I still have to be the guy who's driving the science of OsteoStrong and the science of X3. Mm-hmm. So I have some big tasks in front of me with my two current ones. Mm-hmm. But there's some products on the way, for sure.
Really? That's exciting.
Yeah, and some of them may be in places that people are really surprised.
Really?
Yeah. I've yeah. It's I got to file. Well, I have 300 patents worldwide. Over 300 patents. Yeah. So I got to get some patents nailed down, and even like the first step is just exploring that you can get a patent.
Yes.
There's a couple things I'd like to do. I made, myself and my co-author, Henry Alkire, is coming out with a book in a couple months.
Okay.
It's already in final revisions. In that book, we lay out something really profound about time-restricted eating. And it's something that we discovered it in clinical literature, but researchers didn't know what it meant. Really? So it was described as like, we don't know what this means, but we found this. And I read it, I'm like, I know exactly what that is. Yeah, time-restricted eating. So I basically, right now what I'm doing is I'm eating in a 4-hour window.
Okay.
Like kind of a late lunch and an early dinner.
Okay.
But then I don't eat anything for 44 hours after that. It's like 2-day fasted period. And sometimes it'll even go like 3 days.
So hold on. So you're 240 with the body fat that you have, and you're going 44 hours, sometimes even 3 days without fasting,
Yeah.
and holding that kind of muscle.
You don't lose muscle when you fast.
So I love this.
Just lose body fat because your growth hormone skyrockets. It's because it's the anti-catabolic. I mean, basically your body's saying, we're not able to get a meal right now. So the last thing we want to do is make this guy weaker because he's got to be able to catch the food. So let's, go into body fat stores, right? So, I just get leaner or stay lean by doing that. And then when I eat, this is what the sort of big discovery is. There is, and this is what some new products maybe focus around.
Okay.
There is very strong evidence, incredibly strong evidence, that after you don't eat for a significant period of time, 40 plus hours, you eat something and there is a massive anabolic effect, way beyond growth factors we've measured so far.
Wow.
So by doing this, so my second year of X3, I put on 15 pounds. My third year of X3, I put on 20 pounds. I've actually gained more this year than I did last year.
Well, you look big. I mean, you look bigger. I've seen pictures of you, so, I mean, you definitely look like you put on more mass.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
That's really, so this is, I'm looking forward to hearing about this. So you said you're coming out with a book or a paper. What was it?
A book. It'll be a 300-page book with over 250 scientific references.
And when is it coming out?
3 months.
3 months. Is there a name? Have you named it yet? Is there a name for it?
Oh yeah. Weightlifting is a waste of time, and so is cardio.
Seriously, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, the foreword's written by Forrest Griffin. I have an endorsement from the Miami Heat. They don't, they're not using weights. They're just using X3.
That is awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros. I got an endorsement from Ben Greenfield, woman from a medical doctor at NASA. And she's at SpaceX at the moment. They're doing sort of a internship program between the two. The scientific community, doctors in the scientific community were very leery about my claims of osteogenic loading because it steps on some toes in that field, right?
Okay.
But when it comes to strength and musculature, so the two greatest drivers of long life are being strong and being lean.
Okay.
Those are, unrefuted. Whereas, like someone says, oh, eat vegetables or don't eat vegetables, or eat meat or don't eat meat. There's all kinds of conflicting research, mostly because of Nabisco, because they know vegans don't actually eat vegetables. They eat cookies and crackers and candy bars and shit. Yep. Right. We all know.
Well, they even say, listen, that's what it says, right? It says vegan friendly.
Yeah, on every candy bar it says vegan friendly. Yeah, whoever decided that should be okay. That guy should just get thrown down a long flight of stairs. But yeah, so where was I? We were vegans. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, it was before that. Just things covered in the book, and it's definitely gonna rattle some cages. But like you said, I'm already the most hated guy in the fitness industry, so
might as well push it further.
Yeah.
No, it's really exciting. I can't wait till that book comes out. So just a couple more questions for you, Dr. Jaquish. Okay.
You said it right the first time. It's Jaquish.
Jaquish.
You changed it later on. Jaquish, like Jake and Wish.
Gotcha. Thank you, Jaquish. Yeah. So Dr. Jaquish, do you have like a daily routine that you follow that kind of keeps you? You hear a lot of people that are highly successful. One of the things that they're really big on is having like a daily routine that they practice, whether it's when they first wake up or at some point. And clearly, one of your huge daily routines is using X3 and training. But is there anything?
It's not an option. Skip that. So I'm not as routine based as I would like to be, because up until just a few months ago, I was flying 200,000 miles a year. Because OsteoStrong is in 8 different countries. So I'm flying Australia, Iceland, United Kingdom, Sweden. And right before that, I was doing a lot of business in Finland and in Russia. I don't make anything in China anymore, but I used to years and years ago. So having a routine when you travel that much is like, it's just not happening. So I'm kind of getting a little bit better about that now. Now, X3 had to fit in wherever it fit in before. So that would kind of suck, because I'd be there to support the local clinics, and I don't like working out first thing in the morning. It's just not my thing.
Okay.
I'm not nearly as powerful as if I can get a little bit of caffeine in me and start moving a little bit and be a little more coherent.
Okay.
So it's the way I am.
So when do you usually train? What time of the day do you usually train?
Noon.
And is it fasted training, or have you eaten something?
Always.
Always fasted.
No, you don't want anything in your stomach when you train, because there's just less blood to go to the muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
And what motivates you? Like, what inspires you?
There's a couple people that inspire me. I have a pretty sweet girlfriend, and you can probably hear her giggling. She's over there. So I admire her a lot because she's sweet. I am not sweet. So I'm just trying to be a little more like her sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just, maybe instead of telling somebody that they could, they should probably fall down a long flight of stairs, maybe I'll just be like, yeah, you and I just disagree. So there's a lot I admire, and people that have some quality.
Whoa.
Yeah, my Zoom background is a small child made out of ground beef. Let me change that. It's so gross. Yeah. You see the eyes? It's terrible. Yeah, meat baby. I clearly did not have a serious phone call on Zoom before. Damn it! How do I fix this?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Virtual background. Here we go. There we go.
All right. We're back. Excellent. Yeah. So we were talking about the type of people that inspire you, and you've always been very. I mean, you're clearly super confident. Very passionate. You seem very driven. You seem driven, very driven as well. Have you always been, this driven? to do the thing. I know you talk about, you know, not having the fear of taking action, but going for it. You said you grew up with a very successful father. You know, what were some of the lessons that you took from him, and have you always been this driven?
I think when you're excited about something, like, there's just nothing better. Like, I can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now I'm also very black and white. Like, either I'm very excited about something or I just don't care. Like, you know, somebody talks to me about the economy. You know, I'm very excited about geopolitics and economics.
Mm-hmm.
Though we won't cover that subject now, but it's like I'm into it. I pay attention to it. I try and understand as best I can. But at the same time, somebody could talk to me about, you know, buffalo migration or something, and I'm like, dude, you know, I don't care. Like, my eyes glaze over. Yeah, unless they're dying off or something, like I'm not into this. So yeah.
So yeah,
now,
yes, it's easy to be passionate. You know, it's easy to be driven when you're excited about something.
Yeah, and I just try to work on things I'm excited about.
And so, what were you doing before? You went, you know, you came up with the idea to help your mom, and you did this research. What were you doing?
I was doing software sales, enterprise software sales. Yeah, working for a sort of B2B solution, customer relationship management type thing.
Wow.
In both financial services space and in entertainment space. Like, some of my earlier clients were Kelly Clarkson, NSYNC,
What?
Hall and Oates.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. That was fun. It was fun, giving the customers a great experience. So, you know, like Hall and Oates, they kind of made a comeback, like, well, I don't know, what was, like 15 years ago. And we launched some digital products for them, which helped build relationships with their customers. And so we were instrumental in that comeback. Yeah.
I love
But
it.
that's what I was doing. And I mean, was I excited about that? Yeah. But not like this.
And what lessons did you take from your dad that you think have you know, have helped you achieve what you've achieved?
Hundreds of things. It's really tough. He's a really interesting guy, and he knows a lot. One of the things I got from him is he has no fear of public speaking. And everyone has, I think everyone's born with a fear of standing up in front of everybody and saying something, because nobody wants to look like a dummy. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to look silly. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to be the guy who people go, God, look at this, you know, this jerk. My dad was just fearless when it came to that. And I'd go to conferences where he would speak, mm-hmm. and there were just hundreds of people there, hanging on his every word. And I just admired it. And I decided that I was going to be just like that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was important to me, for sure.
You clearly, you know, and I think that kind of ties into what you said about, you know, kind of not having that fear, taking action, doing it anyway. You really do come across as, I think there's a book, I forgot the name of the author. I forgot her name, but it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
My girlfriend has. Do you know the author?
No, I can Google it. Let's see.
No. I've definitely seen the book.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how you come across. You don't. I mean, it just doesn't matter to you.
Successful people don't. Like Elon Musk gets criticized all the time, and he's constantly doing things that people said he could never do. Like, I really admire that guy for that, not just for his electric car.
Right.
I mean, it's not my style. I wouldn't want one. I drive a Lamborghini. It's white.
I've seen those.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But that guy just doesn't care. Steve Jobs just didn't care.
Right.
Like him or not, our president just doesn't care. He so doesn't care when somebody criticizes him for doing something, he'll do it 4 or 5 more times. And I got a strange feeling he's a lot more popular than people think he is.
Yeah, I
think the election's going to come around and people are going to be like, oh, yeah, everybody hates the president. And they're going to find out that really not a lot of people hate the president. About 10% of the really loud people do, but nobody else really does. Because, he didn't get elected gentleman of the United States. He got elected president of the United States, and leadership sucks. Like, it's not a fun job. So, he's got to make tough decisions. And, when you make a policy decision of any kind, and this is true of any president, I felt sorry for Obama. Like, everything he would do, half the country would be like, oh, yeah, this guy, let's throw him out. Like what a thankless job. But anyway, my point is, you can't give a fuck.
Powerful advice, man. Powerful advice.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Jaquish, thank you so much for showing up here and kind
Lawrence, this is great.
No, man, I'm telling you, just like you're a very genuine guy, as successful as you are, and it's kind of awesome getting some insight into your thoughts and kind of how you think and what it is that you've achieved so far, and what it is you're going to achieve, because I'm very confident that some other big things will be coming from your endeavors, and it excites me. So where can our listeners where can they find you? Where can they, if they want to follow you and kind of?
Well, if they're interested in the products, they can go to jaquishbiomedical.com.
Okay.
That's JAQUISH. Or x3bar.com. Most people are looking for X3. And then on social media, it's Dr. John Jaquish on Facebook, and then Instagram, it's DRJAQUISH. And I give away a lot of sort of free health advice on Instagram and Facebook. Okay. So follow me on either.
Yeah. And you've got to relaunch that that show you were doing about
yeah, it's funny. I was so anti YouTube because I just look at the comments on YouTube and I just think, like, who are the inmates who they let have computers? Like, these guys are just garbage human beings. But it's a combination between the sort of jealousy-driven nature of the fitness industry. By the way, the medical industry has like no trolling whatsoever. It's hilarious. Like, sometimes a doctor will show up with a serious question, and then you answer that question with data, and they're like, "Thank you very much. I'm definitely going to recommend your solution to my patients." Like, that's like the hardest conversation you have in medicine. But fitness, talking to the average bodybuilding fan, not really bodybuilder, but bodybuilding fan, is sort of like playing chess with a pigeon. Because what will happen is you'll win, and then they'll knock over all the pieces, shit on the board, puff their chest out, and act like they won the argument.
Right.
Even though they don't even understand the words being used in the argument. So you know, you just can't, like, most of these people are unsavable.
Right.
So I really didn't like YouTube because of that low level of intelligence that is just notorious there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and like I said, fitness is so jealousy driven, so ego driven. You know, who looks better than who has better abs than who, which is also not science. Who cares? You know, like that's ridiculous.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, it's just got such a nature like that. But I'm doing it anyway.
You got to do it. You got to do it. It's a great. It was, you know, it was great. It was a great little show. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
And when your book comes out, that's perfect. I mean, that's perfect segue.
Yeah.
To, you know, for that show. And I got to tell you one last thing. I'll say this. You know, you're the best spokesman for X3 that there could be. You know, part of this conversation is, you know, convinced me. I mean, I'm buying the X3, right? I'm buying it soon, you know, this weekend after speaking.
Awesome.
Yeah, after speaking with you. And honestly, I did a fair bit of research on you in order to have this conversation. And in just seeing everything you've described, I mean, you don't have to sell the X3. You don't have to promote it. You don't have to, like you said, if you're intelligent, then how could you be training any other way going forward?
Yeah. All people have to do is listen or read. Yeah. And it's like, you have like even sort of the sideways hat bodybuilder fan. If there's a lot of the guys like that are kind of higher level trained guys that hang out at Chris Bell's gym.
Yeah. Chris Bell, yep.
Yeah. Chris Bell's gym, super training in Sacramento.
Yep.
And like, sometimes they'll be like, yeah, you know, I see your ads. Like, your product just seems really stupid to me. And I'm like, well, tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
And they really don't have a reason. They're just like, well, you need weights. And I'm like, prove it. Show me the study on that you need weights. You don't need weights. Your central nervous system doesn't know weight. But what it does know is capacity and range of motion, which weights completely do not address. In fact, go against. And so they're like, okay, I'm listening. And then after I explain it, they're like, where do I get one? Right. Like, every time, where do I get one? Right.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, I'm going to look forward to getting it, look forward to using it. And I hope when the book comes out, you'll come on the show again.
I will do it. Definitely. This is a great show. You had great questions. I loved them.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Awesome.
Awesome speaking to you.
Lawrence, thanks so much.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.